Hello, everyone. This is your host, Deborah Poneman, and your Life Without Limits, where we share with our listeners knowledge and tools for shifting consciousness and reaching our highest potential. And I'd like to welcome you to our call with today's guest, Aurora Winter, who will be speaking to us about happiness without limits. Aurora, formerly a film and TV executive producer, is America's leading expert at empowering people to go from heartbreak to happiness. Aurora has reached over 1 million people with her message of hope, healing, and happiness. And in fact, she's been featured on ABC, NBC, Fox, Oprah Radio, and more. Aurora is the founder of the Grief Coach Academy, which is the first and the #1 school devoted exclusively to training coaches how to lead their clients through grief, as well as to empower them to live a life of authentic happiness and have a breakthrough fast. During today's call, Aurora will share her intimate story of healing after her 33-year-old husband died suddenly, leaving her widowed with a 4-year-old son. She's been there. She's taught and helped thousands. She knows the shortcuts, and today she's going to help all of us as well. Some of what you will discover today includes keys to happiness without limits, how to help yourself and others recover after a setback like a divorce or a breakup or a job loss or even a death of somebody close to you, the best and worst things to say to someone in crisis. I am really looking forward to that. And to never be at a loss for words again. The single most important thing most coaches and caring professionals miss. And Aurora will also share with us the PEACE method, which is a simple 5-step process that produces results exceptionally fast. And I cannot wait for that. This is going to be a great call. Aurora, thank you for joining us today. Welcome.
Oh, it's so great to be on the call with you, Deborah. You know, my intention is that everybody will get a lot of takeaway value that they can use in their life right away so they can explode their happiness. And also, I'd love people to never be at a loss for words again. I mean, it's so difficult when we're dealing with a friend or family member or a client who's devastated from a divorce or a death or an illness or a breakup, and you will learn on this call some things to say and not to say so that you'll never be at a loss for words again.
Well, I'm looking forward to that, really and truly. I have to tell you, just in the last few weeks, I've had like 3 or 4 of my closest friends lose parents, and I wish that I had interviewed you 3 or 4 weeks ago. So, but there's no time like the present. I would love it if, before we dive into all of that, if you could just take a few minutes and share what you believe to be the major turning points in your own life that allowed you to become really the premier coach for people who are going through grief. Tell us how that all came about.
Yeah. Well, I became obsessed with grief recovery and with happiness and how to deliberately and proactively create happiness through my own personal life. I thought my life was great. I had a wonderful husband. We had launched a multi-million-dollar business from scratch. We had a beautiful 4-year-old son. We were building our dream home on a lake in Whistler. I had a dream of being a screenwriter, and I just met Mel Gibson and Goldie Hawn and John Badham, who directed the movie Stakeout. And as a consequence, I'd been hired and paid, real money to write a screenplay. So my life seemed excellent and just on the cusp of getting even better. And then my 33-year-old husband died suddenly. And he was my best friend, my business partner, obviously the father of our 4-year-old. And in that one moment, my entire life shattered and turned upside down. I felt like Humpty Dumpty. I felt like my life was in pieces, and I had no idea if I'd ever be able to put the pieces of my life back together again. And I struggled and stumbled and flailed around, but I was very proactive, trying to bring my life back into focus, trying to put the pieces back together again, because I had a 4-year-old as my motivation. And eventually I stumbled across a 9-step recipe that really helped me change my life and really was the turning point. Once I implemented all those 9 steps in my own life, I reconnected to joy, to meaning, to purpose, to love. and my life is great again. But I was in the gray zone for a long time. And what I've come to learn since I've been studying happiness for 20 years now is that's typical. Most people after a devastating loss suffer 5 to 8 years. So my life mission is to change that statistic. It's not people's fault. They just haven't been taught what to do to reclaim happiness and to have a life without limits, with happiness without limits. And there's really specific things you can do to create that future for yourself and for those you care about.
Okay, well, we're excited to hear what some of those things are. My first question, though, is it really under your control? Aren't we just like at the mercy of outside circumstances? Can you really change how you feel?
I know. This was really surprising research done by Dr. Edward Diner. He studied 4,000 sets of identical twins over 2 decades. So this is a very comprehensive scientific study. And he learned that while most of us believe that we'll be happier when we lose 10 pounds, when we get married, when we get the corner office, when we, increase our income by 10,000, it's just not true. With the exception of a devastating life circumstance like the death of a spouse and these kinds of things, most of our happiness is not from life circumstances. In fact, people don't turn out to be suddenly much happier, when they win the lottery. So, in fact, he discovered that only 10% of our happiness is due to life circumstances. 40% of our happiness is under our immediate and voluntary control. That means with a powerful coaching question, in an instant, you can shift your happiness. And that's why I have a whole bunch of different coaching processes that take 30 minutes or less. Some of them take just a few minutes that really help and empower people. And that leaves about half of your happiness that will gradually change over time if you implement some happiness habits into your life, which I can share some of those in a moment. But the bottom line is that Abraham Lincoln was right when he said that happiness is an inside job.
Okay. Here's the thing. It's an inside job, and it seems that if there are ways that we could become happier, that we should know them by now. But I'm thinking about it. I never learned specific ways to be happy. I learned reading, writing, arithmetic. And so we never learned that. And then everybody's, so many people, they're just stuck. Maybe they're not really stuck, but they seem stuck.
Well, it's just fairly recently that people got very interested in happiness, and there's been an explosion of interest in that. But if you think about former generations, like, my parents are both still alive. I know yours have passed on to the other side, but my parents were not all that interested in happiness earlier on, and certainly their parents weren't. They were interested in survival. It's only now that we have the luxury of being able to be interested in happiness, although it's very interesting. I lived as a teenager for a year in Indonesia where they were desperately poor and had, very, very little to eat and had, many families living in one home, and they were happy. So happiness is not directly related to income, but what happens, it's, I think, thrown into relief in North America where we have so much affluence and yet so much misery. What's going on? And I think what's going on is it's not people's fault, but they haven't gotten conscious about some proactive things that you can do to get happier. And I also want to just point out that this is not a fluffy kind of conversation. Happiness is essential for your health and your well-being. It's also essential for your wealth. So touching on the wealth for a minute, happy people make $1 million more over a lifetime. So that's huge. But touching on health, happy people live 7 years longer. They're 35% less likely to get sick. And, broken heart syndrome, which I'm sure you've heard about in the news, Deborah, is a real thing. People can die of a broken heart. And people can also die from stress and ongoing chronic stress. There was another study done that was published in May 2008 in Bottom Line Health, and they discovered that women who had arguments with their husband were 4 times more likely to die in a 10-year period. So this conversation we're having today about happiness is essential for your health, for your wealth, for your longevity, for your well-being, and certainly for having that life without limits.
Okay, so I know that we would like to have some happiness secrets. And then, of course, we also want to know what we should say to people who are grieving. do you feel that this is a good time to start sharing some of those?
Let's go right into that. So what are some of the best and worst things to say? It was very interesting. There was a study done, and they discovered that within 48 hours of any tragedy, people heard over 100 common things. But of those 100 common things, only about 19 were helpful. The rest can actually be harmful. So if it's automatically coming out of your mouth or it's something that everybody else has said, it's probably a clue that's not a good thing. So these are things to say to a friend or family member or a client who's dealing with a death, a divorce, a breakup, or other kinds of heartbreaking things such as finding out that they or a loved one has cancer, finding out that they have a special needs child, discovering that they need to put their parents in a home, perhaps one of them has Alzheimer's, these kinds of issues. So you don't want to say things like, it just takes time, or don't feel bad. Instead, you want to be a safe space for the person to express however they're feeling. Don't feel bad is not helpful. You don't want to say things like, you're young, you can get another husband. I mean, people told me that at my late husband's funeral. Oh, I was 31, and he, had been dead just a couple of days, and they're already saying, well, you're young, you can get another husband. What does that have to do with the fact that that man, who was the love of my life, is in a casket, and his son, who's by my side, won't have his father living, breathing beside him again? It so misses the point. Or, don't say things like, well, you're young, you can have another child, or at least you have other children. I know that these are coming from a desire to minimize or to comfort the person, but when you minimize their authentic experience, it can come across very disconnected and even disrespectful. And also, it's really about the discomfort of the listener. So I invite everybody, when you hear bad news, take a deep breath and just be willing to be present with the other person. When you are listening, you are giving an enormous gift. But let me come back to a couple more things not to say. You don't want to say, I know how you feel. Even me, I'm a young widow. My husband died suddenly. I don't know how another person feels in any one moment. I can connect with them. I can be present with them. But if you say, I know how you feel, it can land like, I get it already. Don't tell me about it. And that's the opposite of what a person in crisis or grieving or heartbreak needs. They actually need a safe space to vent, because if you can't feel it, you can't heal it. And so your listening is very helpful. Or you don't want to say things like, you should be over it by now. I mean, who made you the timekeeper? It's better to just be willing to accept the person wherever they are in the process. And then, obviously you'll listen as long as is comfortable for you. You're not necessarily a trained coach or a specifically trained grief coach, but you can at least listen for a few minutes. Men can maybe listen for 5 minutes. Maybe a girlfriend can listen for 20 minutes or half an hour. And just before you've listened more than you can, just let them know, I've got 20 minutes. I'd love to listen. And then if you want to, you can refer them to someone else to give them more support. So those are a couple of bad things to say. I'm sure you've heard some other bad things, Deborah, in your own life. Did you want to add to that list?
No, but to me, what you said, don't minimize their experience. Let them experience their experience. That was so beautiful, the way you put that, and also to be a good listener, because sometimes we're just so anxious to share our knowledge of the grieving process, and really I think what you said was they want to be heard.
Exactly. That's exactly right. And that's a huge gift you give when you listen without fixing. The other thing is, don't minimize their experience, but don't maximize it either. I mean, I had people tell my 4-year-old son at his father's funeral, you're the man of the house now. You need to look after your mother. Like, whoa, that had never occurred to him or me at that point. And so that was adding problems. So don't add problems. The grieving person's already got enough on their plate. Here's a couple of good things to say. You're not alone. I'm here. So comforting. Whatever somebody's going through, it's so nice to know they have a support team and that you're on it. It's wonderful to reassure the person that grief is a normal and natural reaction to loss, and what they're going through is normal and natural. When I was first grieving, I'm like, whoa, this is so intense. Do I need to check myself into the insane asylum now? Or, But grief is intense, and to just be reassured it's normal and natural reaction to loss is reassuring. I don't know what to say. If you can't remember anything else from this call, when you're like don't know what to say, you can remember that because it'll be your authentic truth. So it's better to say an authentic I don't know what to say than to say, something condescending or something automatic or an automatic I'm sorry, because the grieving person or the heartbroken person or the stressed person will be like, oh, that's genuine, that's authentic, this is a safe person, I can talk to them and be genuine and authentic too. Or my heart goes out to you is great. And I like to recommend a specific question, like what specifically can I do to support you, and then maybe give an A or a B choice. So what specifically can I do to support you? Would you like to come on over on Saturday for barbecue, or would you like me to babysit the kids so that you could go for a run on Sunday morning? Something like that. A grieving person, can't really process information as well as they normally would because so much of their brain is consumed with all the coulda, shoulda, wouldas about the past and all the fear and anxiety about the future. So it's not so helpful to tell somebody who's in crisis or really stressed out, give me a call if you need something. That doesn't really work. Does that make sense, Deborah?
Not only does it make sense, but I am telling you, Aurora, this morning I was talking to a friend whose father just passed away, and I said to her, let me know if there's anything I could do. And as soon as I said it, I thought, that was lame. I got that intuitively, that it was just like as if she knows,
Right.
And I was wondering why it just didn't feel right, and now you're explaining it. It's like, really, now you're saying as if she knows.
Yeah.
But if you say something specific, like offer an alternate choice.
They can process that. In the Wall Street Journal, they published that the workplace cost of grief and heartbreak and stress is $75 billion a year with a B, $75 billion. And that's due to accidents, absenteeism. They're there, but there's no there. And that's, we really need to understand that grieving, heartbroken, and stressed out people, they're not operating at their best. So anything we can do, like giving them an A or a B choice, to invite them into something that they can manage is really great. So like just a bite size. Because dealing with grief is like, oh my God, there's a whole elephant here and they need to eat bite by bite. So it's helpful if the rest of life is a little bit easier. And, that's why a lot of people benefit from having a grief coach, because who wants to stay in that gray zone of grief for 5 to 8 years when with the right coaching recipe and with the right support, you can get through it much more quickly. There's a couple of myths that keep people stuck in heartbreak as well. Would you like me to share those?
Would love that.
Yeah. I think the most common myth that keeps people stuck is it just takes time. This is what I'm out to bust, just why all the coaching processes I teach at the Grief Coach Academy takes 30 minutes or less, because most people believe it just takes time. I did. People who loved me told me it just takes time. So after my husband died, suddenly at the age of 33, I'm waiting and waiting and waiting. But just like if your car has a flat tire, it takes some time to get back on the road, but it's not the time that gets you back on the road. It's calling AAA and having them come and change the tire. So it's the same with broken-hearted people or grieving people or super very stressed people dealing with some major life crisis. It does take some amount of time to do the work of processing this new information and making some new and wise choices that are appropriate. But if you just wait, time alone is not going to do that for you. I think, a lot of people ask me, well, how long should I wait before working with a grief coach? It's like, people would never ask, how long should I wait if I have a broken arm before I go see the doctor? I mean, they would go see the doctor right away. And so it's funny that we somehow think that it's good to let our wounds fester a little while if it's dealing with a broken heart. And I take a stand for, happiness without limits right now. So take action right now if you're stressed or heartbroken or grieving. And I'll give you some things to do in a minute here. Some other myths that keep people stuck in that stressed or heartbroken or limited place is the story, it's my fault. I love the movie The Secret, and I think there is value at certain times looking at, if I'm the center of the universe and this is all about me, how could that be, something I could learn or grow from? So that can be useful. But if a person is grieving, it's like they've been walking along in the park on a sunny day and they fall down the well. when they're at the bottom of the well and it's dark and it's slippery and there's probably spiders and maybe snakes down there and they're frightened and stuck, that's not the time to be doing. You should have been looking where you were going. That's the time to come along with the flashlight and a rope ladder and throw down the ladder and say, hey, I'm here and I'm going to help you climb out, and turn on the flashlight so they can see. And maybe once you help them, or they get help through a grief coach to get through it, and they're standing out of the well and back in the sunshine, then it might be kind of useful to look, oh, look, you tripped over that branch there. Pay attention to that next time, or whatever. So a bit of a digression there, but I think that we don't want to blame the victim, and that's not useful. So it's your fault, not helpful, and that will keep people stuck in heartbreak. The if only, the coulda, shoulda, wouldas, that'll keep people stuck. When I first started coaching people through grief, I was kind of surprised to hear the rather convoluted reasons that people would come up with why it was their fault. But after this happened time and time again, I began to see, this was a pattern, and that, grieving people do tend to get stuck in guilt many, many times, and that's just part of the grief process, so you want to get through that as quickly as possible. I know that my husband died the day that we moved, and for a long time I crucified myself with that. I was like, well, if only I'd hired a mover, if only the phone had been connected, because we just moved, it hadn't been connected yet, if only I'd known better CPR because he died in front of me. And I crucified myself with that. It was like such a heavy thing. Later I talked to a cardiac specialist, and I realized it had nothing to do with me, and I couldn't have saved him, but that was really heavy for a very, very long time. And I think people who are dealing with a divorce or a breakup, many times the counsel they get from their friends is, there's plenty of fish in the sea, so they immediately go out to replace the loss. If you total your car, go buy a new car. But if you total your marriage, a little reflection and grieving and mourning the loss of the hopes and dreams for that relationship is the best thing you can do to create a fertile soil and an open heart for the next relationship. So don't skip over the learning and the healing and the mourning, because it is part of reclaiming your life without limits, with happiness without limits in a new relationship. But you need to do that work, in my experience, definitely first. The last myth I'll share here real quick is to have an idea that you need to be fixed because you're grieving. No, grief is a normal and natural reaction to loss. So get support, but don't think that there's something wrong with you. There'd be something wrong with you if you weren't grieving after your mother died, or your father died, or your husband died, or you found out your child had special needs, your parent had Alzheimer's. So grief is a normal and natural reaction to loss. Get support, but you don't need fixing. You don't necessarily need a therapist. A coach can help. Friends can help, and some things we're going to do here in a minute, like the peace method, can help you help yourself.
And how about one other thing? You said, I don't know where I read it about you, something called the grief relief wheel, I believe it is. Is that something that can aid us in getting over grief?
Oh, absolutely, the grief relief wheel. It's a kind of a cool thing, and I can talk people through it over the phone. So what you want to do is, it's a nice, quick coaching process that allows you to see where your life is off balance and what to do about it. So draw a big circle in front of you, and a big piece of paper, a big circle, and have like spokes coming out from the center. So you're going to just rate yourself on a scale of 1 to 10 on each of these things. And I like that it's a wheel because, when our wheel, we have a wheel in our car and it's flat or it's off balance, our life goes ka-thunk, ka-thunk, ka-thunk. And it's the same with our life. So this is why this is a wheel. So you can just, for each one of these spokes coming and radiating out in a wheel, you're going to label them 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So we're going to have 10 all together.
I'm going to stop you for a second. Is 10 like I'm really there, or is 1 I'm really there?
10 is really there, so 10 is the outside of the circle, and 1 is definitely needs improvement.
Okay, got it.
I
thought so. I just wanted to make sure.
Yeah, no, that's important. Thank you. So the first one is acceptance and forgiveness. So rate yourself on a scale of 1 to 10. Just today, how do you feel on a scale of 1 to 10? How would you self-rate on acceptance and forgiveness? You can maybe do this too, Deborah. And then how would you rate yourself on self-expression on a scale of 1 to 10? And there's no wrong or right, just to kind of notice how do you assess yourself on self-expression today from 1 to 10. And then on spiritual connection from 1 to 10, what would you give yourself on that today? And then in terms of support systems on 1 to 10, how would you rate yourself today? With 1, of course, being near the center and 10 being all the way out on the outside of the circle, the full circle. And then how would you rate yourself on self-care on 1 to 10? So then rate yourself from 1 to 10 on finance and legal. So if you've got 10 on finance and legal, your circle will be big. And if you've got 1, then that'll be near the center of the spokes. From 1 to 10 on career and profession. From 1 to 10 on family and parenting. From 1 to 10 on physical activity. And then the last one is rate yourself for today on 1 to 10 with maintaining daily routine, with 10 being you couldn't be more thrilled with how your daily routine is being maintained, and 1 being what routine? Never heard of it. So then when you just look at what stands out to you, like is it fairly even? Is your whole life, 6s, or your whole life, 8s, 9s, and 10s, or is it very jaggedy? Do you have some things that are really low and other things that are, really high? So for most people when they do this, what stands out is, wow, I've got a couple of scores that are really high. I don't know if you're comfortable sharing what stands out to you, Deborah. Like you probably have some things that stand out on the high side. Would you be willing to share?
Well, I do, but I tend to be hard on myself. It's like I work out at least 3 or 4 times a week, but I give myself a 5 or 6 on that. For somebody else, they'd go, "Are you kidding?" I'd give myself a 10 if I worked out once a week.
You definitely rank yourself hard. Okay.
Yes, and I was thinking about that. I thought, how hard we are on ourselves on here, and I thought maybe that's acceptance. And because I had given myself a 9 on acceptance and forgiveness, because I don't have anybody that I can think of that I haven't forgiven or they haven't forgiven. And then I thought, but maybe I don't really accept myself, because otherwise I would give myself a 10. I think too much on physical activity instead of like a 6. But all of mine are pretty much 7, 8. They're all, almost everything is 7, 8. I gave myself low on finance because I don't have any grip on my finances. Like I don't have a clue. I'm not organized at all. And but the rest are 7, 8s, 9s.
Nice. So already just kind of looking at it, some things stand out and you start to have greater awareness around some important questions, like do you fully self-accept? Huh?
I said like finances.
Yeah. So then here's a cool thing to do. So on finances, you've given yourself a low number. So I'm not going to ask you what a 10 would look like, but just +2. So what low number did you give yourself, if you're willing to share?
Well, again, I gave myself a 5 because
you are
even
very
legal,
hard on yourself.
Yes, even legal, I'm not sure if our living wills are. I got to look into that. Like just stuff in that area. Taxes. But you know what? If I increase that by 2, I at least would go look in the safe and see if our living wills are up to date and not resuscitate all that stuff. I don't know if it's even would hold up legally. So I would do those things if I raised it a couple notches.
So that's where the coaching part of this comes in, is instead of looking at the 5 and wanting it to be a 10, which then can be too big of a step, is just say, well, what would it take to be a 7? And what I'm hearing is just to go look and see if your living wills, would hold up, would be a 7 for you.
Yeah.
So then the next question is, what action would you be willing to take in the next 24 hours towards checking on that?
Actually, I'm going to do that. I am going to do that in the next 24 hours. That feels good already because, it's been on my mind, but I haven't had, any kind of incentive to go do it and just get out those documents and take a look. I mean, I don't know. Anyway, because we have people we're legal guardians for. I should really take a look at all of that.
It's funny because I understand that a number of students at the Grief Coach Academy are financial planners, and they review wills, and it's funny, they'd be sitting with a 65-year-old person, and they're still in their will as the guardianship for their very adult children now. So, yeah, these things do need to be checked into.
Yeah.
So what's really cool is when you just ask yourself, what does a 7 look like, you can get excited about taking some action. And I love to invite people to take some action within the next 24 hours. But it could be a small action, like find the key for the safety deposit box or send one email. And then to choose another action that you will have done within 30 days. So the 30-day action might require like meeting with a lawyer, or it might be, a bigger task. I'm not sure if anything comes to mind that you would like to do within 30 days on going from a 5 to a 7.
Yeah, well, people are going to think, really, Deborah? Well, I think what I'm going to commit to do in 30 days, this is great for me, by the way. Thank you. I hope everybody's enjoying this. This is so great. What I'm going to do, and I hope everybody's committing to something in 30 days, I am going to sit down with my husband and really get clear on our finances. Like, really.
Good.
And again, I've been wanting to do that for you have no idea how long. And I think he has a grip, but I don't.
Well, good. Well, I really celebrate that. And I celebrate that, for everybody listening to this, follow Deborah's beautiful example and notice something that stands out to you that's lower than you'd like. Ask yourself, what would +2 on that thing look like? Ask yourself, what action would you be excited to take in the next 24 hours and in the next month on that thing? And you can hear Deborah's voice. She's excited. There's enthusiasm, and it's going to get done. So do that, everyone who's listening to this on all of those things. And then let's not end only on things that, you want to take some action on. But what stands out to me when you shared is you've got a lot of highs. You've got a lot of 7, 8, 9s. And so tell me about the 9 for acceptance and forgiveness. Is that your highest one?
In spiritual connection, I have a 9. I feel connected to all that is. That feels good to me. But yeah, acceptance and forgiveness and spiritual connections are my 2 9s.
Okay, so let's just take a moment here and just take a deep breath and really celebrate and honor that you have a 9 in acceptance and forgiveness and a 9 in spiritual connection. And just, so often we only focus on what we'd like to do better, and we forget to say, hey, 2 gold stars for Deborah. So I'm not going to ask you what a 10 would look like. I'm just going to invite you to give yourself a gold star for each of those things and to take a deep breath and to really take that in and honor and acknowledge you with gratitude for being the kind of person who has a 9 in acceptance and forgiveness and in spiritual connection. How does that feel, Deborah?
It feels really good because I realize how far I have come. And thank you again for this, because normally if somebody said, give yourself a gold star for acceptance and forgiveness, I would start telling you all the ways that I don't accept myself and others and forgive. But I think I've gotten to the point that I really feel like I'm a 9, but I didn't notice it until you just pointed that out through this exercise. It feels great.
Wonderful. And for all the listeners, please do the same. Whatever is your highest or maybe 2 highest things that you are pleased with, acknowledge you, whether it's a 7 or an 8 or 9 or 10 or whatever. Just take a moment and acknowledge. So that's a quick flavor for one of the coaching processes I teach at the Grief Coach Academy, which is called the Grief Relief Wheel. And if you do this process every day for 30 days, you would be amazed at the transformations. I get so many emails and comments for wow, that changed my life. So it's pretty cool.
Wow. Okay, well, now I'm a glutton for your exercises. Now I want to do the peace method.
Okay. Now you see the value in this. And it's quite quick, in a very little time you get some insight, some wisdom, and greater expansiveness to happiness. So the peace method is a 5-step coaching process. So peace is to remind you. It's an acronym. The P stands for present moment. The E stands for express. The A stands for accept. The C stands for consider the contrary, and the E stands for enthusiasm. So it's a 5-step coaching process. And I used this on myself recently. My mother had a stroke 3 weeks ago, and my brother called me, and I was out having tea. So I get that dreaded phone call, Mom's in the hospital and doesn't look good. So immediately, stab in the heart, horrible pain as I confront, she's going to die. That was the thought that came like a crushing blow into my heart. And so I thought, well, you know what to do, Aurora. Use your own peace method process. So what you do with the peace method is you isolate what is the one painful thought that is causing the most agony, and then you do it you through all the 5 steps, just isolating that one painful thought. So I liken those painful thoughts to like a prison, a brick prison. And on the other side of the prison is a beautiful garden and butterflies and flowers and hummingbirds and freedom. But we are limited by these painful thoughts, and we're in a brick prison really of our own making, although there's no need to be unkind about it, just to kind of notice. And just like if you were a prisoner, if you threw your body against the wall and tried to take the whole thing down at once, you would just get a sore shoulder. But if, on the other hand, you focused on one brick at a time and tried to dislodge it, you might be able to loosen it or perhaps even pop it out. And just like with a prison, you don't actually need the whole wall to come down. You just need a big enough hole to slither through and escape. So it works best with our painful thoughts as well if we identify one and focus our attention on just the one and follow it through this 5-step process. You might notice other adjacent painful thoughts, and then you can take them through the process as well. So I'll use my own experience a couple weeks ago, and she's going to die was what came up for me. So the P of the peace method first invites you to come into the present moment. And, as you're listening to this call, you can either notice the thought she's going to die for you, about someone you care about, maybe your mother, maybe your sister, maybe your wife, maybe a friend, maybe a daughter. Or if you have another painful or stressful thought, you could follow it through the process as I talk you through she's going to die. So the first step, maybe you can do this with us, Deborah, is just take a couple of deep breaths and just come into your body, really come into the present moment. And take another deep breath. Take a whole belly breath. And one more deep breath. Alrighty, so even just a couple of breaths, like no matter how stressed you are, you can take some deep breaths when you're at a stoplight or when you're, you can take a very brief walk outside and take some deep breaths, and that will help you to come into the present moment. Even 2-3 breaths, even one breath really will make a difference. And then the P invites this question, which is this thought, she's going to die, about the past, the present, or the future. So you can see from the verb tense, she's going to die, that it's actually an anticipation of a future outcome. And as Eckhart Tolle says, you can never solve all potential future problems. As soon as you're in the future, catastrophizing future outcomes, you're storytelling, you're projecting, and you're disempowered. So I noticed that I was in the future because she's not dead yet, right? And I brought myself back into the present, which is my point of power. And then the E of the peace method invites us to express our feelings. Because if you can't feel it, you can't heal it. And when we stuff our feelings, that poison stays inside as stress. So I gave myself a moment to just express my feelings. I could have written them down or shared them with a coach or a friend, but I was in the coffee shop by myself, so I just noticed them in my head, and that worked for me. So I just noticed that with the thought she's going to die, I felt anxious, I felt fearful, I felt tension in my body, I felt worried, I felt orphaned already. It just allowed a moment to honor those feelings because, feelings are our guides. They are useful indicators and helpful. There's no need to eradicate feelings. I liken it to if you're a mother or grandmother or grandfather or father, if you have a 6-year-old girl and your daughter comes running in from outside, she's skinned her knee. She's like, Mommy, I skinned my knee. it's really great if you take the little girl on your lap and say, tell me all about it. I'm here. Tell me all about it. And that's how we want to be with our feelings, rather than to say, you shouldn't be crying over a skin knee, you're fine. That's not helpful. So in that same way, we want to honor our feelings. And it's amazing. If you say, tell me about it, you can learn some very useful things from your feelings. The next step, and you can do this as a journaling process as well, so that's really great. The next step is the A, which is to accept or sometimes appreciate. I just did the acceptance in the case with my mom. So I looked at the thought she's going to die, and I realized that's true. She is going to die. And I immediately felt a shift in my body. Instead of warring with the thought she's going to die, making it the enemy, to realizing the wisdom in it and the truth in it, and to allow that truth just to be there. And my body shifted right away to greater calm and peace. And then the C is consider the contrary. With the A, you can also sometimes look for things to appreciate. Considering the contrary would be just the direct opposite. She's not going to die. I didn't get too much juice out of that. It was actually the acceptance that was most powerful for me this particular time, but it will vary which of the steps is most powerful for you. It could be any one of them. But the opposite, she's not going to die, is true in some ways. Her soul is immortal in my experience. Her DNA and her thoughts and her stories live on in me and others. Her love has touched so many, like you were sharing before we started recalling, Deborah, what your father said. That's a beautiful thing, to make other people happy, as my mother has done and as your father did, Deborah. So considering the contrary, she's not going to die, or consider the contrary of whatever your painful thought is. And then the final step of the peace method is the last E is for enthusiasm. And you're going to like this, Deborah. You'll resonate with it with your 9 in spiritual connection. Enthusiasm, to remind us all, really just means to be filled with God, like N-Theo, being God. So enthusiasm calls the question, so what are you going to do now? What do you consciously choose to do with God or with enthusiasm? So what I realized is I'm going to go visit my mother. I chose to take action that was wise, was appropriate, and I booked a flight to go see her. It almost takes longer to explain it than it did for me to do it, but the shift in my energy and the clarity of my thinking and in choosing an appropriate, proactive response was beautiful. And without a coaching process like the Peace Method or the Grief Relief Wheel or various other coaching processes, you could stay stuck in the angst of it or the heartbreak or the grief of it, for much, much longer. How does that resonate with you, Deborah?
I absolutely love this. I mean, you had me at express your feelings. I love when you say, with the little child on your knee, tell me about it. We could say that yourself. Tell me about it,
Yeah.
Like, how does it feel? And tell yourself about it. I just wanted to kind of like get off the phone and go do that.
Oh, that's good. Well, it is so powerful. It's so simple, though. You can use this yourself as a journaling process. I teach this at the Grief Coach Academy. One of the things I like about my book is I explain the process in greater depth and give you some other tools. But the second half of the book is all transcripts of actual coaching sessions with different people. And so you can hear the ahas that they had with all kinds of different painful thoughts, from I missed my chance, to he cheated, to I'm going to die, to, there's not enough money, all kinds of different stressful or heartbroken thoughts. And it was fun for me to just notice, sometimes the release or the shift to happiness would happen on one step and other people would happen on another step. But what I find is like having these 5 different steps is like your favorite power yoga class at the gym, or it's like your favorite all-round training session at the gym. It doesn't do everything, but it hits, 5 major muscle groups and gives you some cardio. So it's a very good, well-rounded 5-step approach to any heartbroken or stressful thought.
Fantastic. And my favorite class at the gym is called Total Conditioning. So
okay, it's your Total Conditioning class then, Deborah.
There you have it. Okay, so I know that our time is getting towards the end, but maybe I was just going to do a lightning round with some questions that we absolutely have to have answered. One is, what is the number one secret to happiness without limits?
It's gratitude. You can never go wrong with gratitude, and it's so easy to keep a gratitude journal. As I fall asleep every night, I think about all the things I'm grateful for from that day. In the morning, I keep a gratitude journal. Just writing down a couple things you're grateful for will shift your perspective to happiness without limits. Such a powerful and easy thing to do. Highly recommend gratitude as your go-to thing for happiness.
Very good. And then what is the single most important thing most coaches and caring professionals miss? I need to know that.
I think the main thing that, caring professionals miss and coaches as well, whether they're, divorce attorneys or nurses or chiropractors or massage therapists or others who deal with people in the caring professions, is that grief is inevitable. It is inevitable that you are going to be dealing with grieving people. And you've got to, in my opinion, if you're a coach or in the healing professions, you've got to be able to help your clients through it. The other thing is that when you are there for them in their darkest hour, they never forget, and they become loyal for life and raving fans. So even if you're a business coach coaching people to double their income, you need to be ready for the call, because someday it is going to happen. My husband just left. My mother just died. I just found out I've got cancer. And how you deal with that phone call is going to make the difference between a loyal client for life who's eternally grateful and somebody who goes, ow, that didn't feel good. So I think we all need these tools in our toolkit. And like you said earlier, Deborah, it's kind of weird that we're not taught in school about happiness or about how to recover from heartbreak, but I think everybody needs these tools to help themselves and help others bounce back, so you can bounce back in a matter of days or weeks rather than 5 to 8 years, which is way too long.
Yeah, I completely agree. And if these tools are available and they work, which obviously they do, bring them on, really.
Absolutely. Well, we only have so much time today, but I got a lot more goodies.
I know you do, and I know you created a special offer, but before you tell us the offer, can you just tell us, our community here, Life Without Limits, we love to hear stories. Can you tell us a few specific experiences that people have had when they applied what you teach?
Oh, yeah, it's amazing. I dealt with one young widow, and she was at the coach training program at the Grief Coach Academy. She did the Peace Method process with me, coaching her through it at one of my events. And at the end of that, she said this. She said, amazing, incredible, indescribable. I have joy in my heart that I have not had for 4.5 years. She said the next morning her eyes were a different color. She felt lighter. She felt bouncier. I checked in with her 3 months later, and she said she could not believe it. Her life had taken off. This thing that she'd been carrying around for 4.5 years hadn't shifted, but she had shifted. She started dating, she lost weight, her income exploded, and it was all from one 20-minute coaching process she did with me at one of the events. So that was amazing. I find in general the coaches that study at the Grief Coach Academy, or people who have these tools in their toolkit, they age in reverse, or so it seems. I see the coaches who train at the Grief Coach Academy 4 times a year at our event, so I firsthand witness, holy moly, they lose weight, they look younger. And what I think it is, when we have unresolved grief in our life, it's like we're carrying these boulders around of the weight of the divorce, the breakup, the bankruptcy, the death, etc. And without help, your purse gets heavier and heavier and heavier until you're lugging this 100-pound purse around, and you wonder why you can't run or dance or sparkle anymore. And just through having the process, we touched on just 2 of them, the Grief Relief Wheel and the Peace Method, but by having these processes to help you pick it up, look at it, tell me about it, like with a kid, and then put it down and release it like you're done with it, is so, so empowering. So that's really cool. I had another woman whose name is Ruth Zoda. Oh, that first person's name was Mickey Knowles. Ruth Zoda has a special needs child on the autism spectrum, and she said this. She said, "I can't believe the shift. I've gone from thinking that my daughter is driving me insane to realizing with gratitude that she is driving me sane." So her epiphany when I coached her using the peace method process was that her daughter is actually driving her sane, driving her into wisdom, into enlightenment, into consciousness, into kindness, into awareness. And it was so great to see something that had been a source of stress to be received in her heart as her greatest gift. Like that was so cool. That was pretty amazing.
Wow. Thank you so much for sharing that. And on that note, please tell us about your offer, because I love when I see people transform, and this knowledge just seems to me to be some of the most powerful I've heard. And I'm going to give everybody the URL so when Aurora shares the offer that she put together for our community, you can follow along. And that URL is yourlifewithoutlimits.com/happiness. So again, it's yourlifewithoutlimits.com/happiness, HAPPINESS. So Aurora, can you let everyone know what they'll find there?
Oh, absolutely. Like I mentioned earlier, I think these are tools that everybody needs in their toolkit. You know, happy people earn $1 million more of their lifetime. They live 7 years longer. They're 35% less likely to get sick, and they're happier. So, you know, this is an incredible offer. If you use the offer, I promise you it will dramatically increase your happiness and be worth 1,000 times what you paid for it, because happiness is priceless. So the Happiness Without Limits package is designed to help you help yourself and help others really claim that peace of mind, claim that happiness, and from that happy place then go ahead and create the life of your desires and your design. So first it includes a video coach training course. This will come to you via email. It's 5 videos and handouts that give you a starting taste of more in-depth on the coaching tools that we have at the Grief Coach Academy. As one example, you had a taste of the Grief Relief Wheel. You'll get a whole video about that and the handout that goes with that. You'll also get a daily productivity planner, which is an amazing tool. It empowers you to quickly and easily double your happiness, your productivity, your creativity, and your clarity in just 30 days. You'll get a little more detail on the peace method process, and you'll get 3 other coaching tools to help you to really live that life of happiness. So that is a really fun thing. The second thing you're going to get is an MP3 about grief coaching, so that you will learn what to say and what not to say to people who are devastated. You'll learn more in depth the things we didn't have time to cover, the myths that keep people stuck, some secrets of successful coaches, and you'll learn the beginning steps anyway of how to help yourself and others go from heartbreak to happiness more quickly and easily. On average, coaches make about $200 an hour, so the career of choosing to be a life coach or choosing to be a coach helping people go from heartbreak to happiness is something to have a look at if you're interested in a second income or you're interested in a second career. So you will get that grief coaching MP3, and it will help you learn how you can make a difference and make 6 figures helping other people as a coach, and that's about a 1-hour audio that you'll get. And then I'm so proud and excited about this. You get an audio book read by myself. It is the book From Heartbreak to Happiness, which is my intimate diary of healing after my husband died suddenly at the age of 33. So many people have told me that this book has inspired them, uplifted them, changed their life. So many people said, wow, you took the words right out of my mouth. And these are people who are dealing with all kinds of different loss. So, well, what I experienced with the death of my husband, it's really helped people who are dealing with a divorce, with a job loss, with a loss of health, with all kinds of different things, which is very interesting for me to notice. And this is an audio book, so you can listen from the convenience of your home. I actually love the hardcover book, but I actually think the audio book is even better because you can hear the emotion, you can hear the inflection, and it's much easier to listen to as you're driving or exercising or whatever. It really helps you know that wherever you are on the path of healing, from whatever your heartbreak might be, that you're not alone. And it is actually pages from my diary after my 33-year-old husband died suddenly. And so it's very real, very raw, very intimate, and shows you can become happy again no matter what challenges or heartbreak happen to be in your life. As Abraham Lincoln said, happiness is an inside job, but as this book shows, it's also a process, and be kind with you and have patience as it goes along. You'll also get the e-book version of that same book, From Heartbreak to Happiness, in case you prefer to read than listen. Wayne Dyer, for example, said, I read every page of this beautiful diary. It touched my heart, and I know it will impact yours. Of course, he's a New York Times bestselling author. And Dr. Bernice Siegel said, I admire Aurora and her work. Others can gain strength from her wisdom and experience of so many lovely people taking the time to make nice comments about my work. Dr. Reverend Michael Beckwith, who's featured in the movie The Secret, said Aurora offers wise tools for appreciating the everyday beauty of living. So in addition to the audiobook, you get the e-book. The number 5 item that you get as an all-inclusive package is a strategy coaching call. This is a $100 value. It's a personal, private phone call, a 15-minute call to help you identify your number 1 challenge and your number 1 opportunity in a private strategy coaching call. You'll get help in creating an action plan to break through anything that's sabotaging your success and happiness, and you'll get clarity on your next step in an action plan to create your ideal life. And then the last thing in this Happiness Without Limits package is phenomenal, the MP3 audios. So basically it's like a front row seat. You can listen in as I lead people more in depth on coaching processes and methods that will help you become happier and help you help others become happier as well. And what's fun about it is because it was recorded live at a workshop, you can hear people's questions, people's ahas, very interactive, and really shave the amount of time it takes to get happy again. So you'll learn how you can make a significant difference. You'll learn secrets to reclaiming happiness both for yourself and for others. You'll learn key communication and leadership skills needed for success and essential coaching skills to help others go from heartbreak to happiness more quickly and more easily using a proven recipe. And you'll also go in more depth on the peace method, which we talked about on this call, and that's such a powerful process for guiding yourself or others from pain till peace. So you get all of those things, all 6 of those things, the video coaching course being number 1, the grief coaching MP3 number 2, the audio book of From Heartbreak to Happiness number 3, the e-book of From Heartbreak to Happiness number 4, the one-on-one personal strategy coaching call being number 5, and the number 6 huge thing being the workshop in a box or an MP3 from the From Heartbreak to Happiness event. And you get all of that for the ridiculously insane great investment of only $97. So that is absolutely phenomenal. You can obviously tell from how much is in that package for, must be worth at least 10 times that easily, that I'm really committed to making a difference to your happiness. So grab it, jump on it, and use it, listen to it, and it will dramatically increase your happiness. Also, just kind of for fun, I thought it would be neat to throw in an extra bonus for the first 18 people who jump on this offer, and that is a bonus $200 off coupon that you can use as a discount on any other product or service or event offered by the Grief Coach Academy. So it's only $97 and you get a $200 bonus if you're one of the first 18, but you'll have to act pretty quick on that. So, and again, Deborah gave the URL, but it's yourlifewithoutlimits.com/happiness. yourlifewithoutlimits.com/happiness. And really, from the bottom of my heart, I've had so many people tell me that this content has transformed their lives. If you don't have the happiness that you would like, or if you're not able to help your friends or family members or clients as powerfully and as deeply as you'd like, then do yourself a favor, do them a favor, and grab this awesome package today. Does that make sense, Deborah?
Absolutely, and every component of it is in itself a complete gem. And then I can't believe you're actually giving us the entire seminar in a box so that we can do it on our own, and that alone is just, obviously it's going to be life-changing, because everything that you've shared with us today has been life-changing, and I so appreciate how much concrete you've already given us. So I thank you for your generosity, and I have two more final questions. One is, I know people are, and especially people out there who are in grief and on any level, or people who are happy already but just want more happiness. What would you say would be the biggest benefit that people could expect to experience right away and then over time by applying what they learned from your program?
I think the biggest benefit is you will, if you do this and you listen to this material, you'll probably shift immediately. And if you use this for 30 days, you will be amazed how smooth your life goes, how much more peaceful you feel, how much more loving you feel, how much more gratitude you feel, how much more happiness you exude and you radiate. And you'll probably notice that you look younger too, but I can't absolutely guarantee that, but that's what I have many people share with me. And then from that happier place, just kind of as a scientist, do an experiment for the next 30 days. Use this material. Use the Peace Method as a daily journaling process. Do the things in the video coach training course every day for 30 days. You get 5 different lessons in there. Do them, and just as an experiment, notice what happens to the rest of your life. Because most people report to me that as they're happier, all kinds of good things happen. They get asked out on dates. They get promoted at work. They find their lost car keys. Like, when you're happy, you attract wonderful opportunities, and you feel, alive again.
Well said. So now the last thing I'm going to ask you is to just share with us some final parting words of wisdom. Again, you've given us so much. We just want a little bit more.
I just want to reach out to listeners and say, I've been there. Wherever you are on your path of healing, I'm happy now. I know you can hear that in my voice, but I'm just like you. After my husband died, I was grieving. I was devastated. I thought I would never get my act together again. I wondered if life had lost all meaning. I was in that dark pit of despair. But I want you to know that it's okay. Wherever you are, you matter. Your happiness matters. Your life matters. The biggest gift you can give the world is to reach for your happiness and take action on your happiness, because from a happy place, you are a radiating beam of love and light that will help your children, your family, your clients, and the world. I think, as we each choose to be that happy place, that peaceful place, that place of service and giving, we together change the world. So I want you just to give yourself a big hug. Wherever you are is just fine. And also, let's move together to go +2 on each of the things that we'd like to get better, including having a life without limits, with happiness without limits.
Aurora, you are amazing. Seriously, you are just, you really embody what you teach, and that says it all.
Thank you.
Really, I thank you so much. I want to tell everybody the URL one more time, yourlifewithoutlimits.com/happiness. And I really encourage you to experience this for yourself. I can't imagine that this package can't be anything but spectacular and life-changing just from having you with us for the last hour. So thank you so much for being here today.
You're so welcome, Deborah.
And thank you to everyone for spending this time with me and with Aurora Winter. And I look forward to when we are all together again and to you living your life without limits. This is Deborah Poneman. Have a wonderful rest of your day. 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 Have a